Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. Today, we are going to be doing another champion showcase. The winner of the last poll was Rotos, the Lost Groom, one of my favorite arena champions in the entire game, and one of my favorite champions on my account. He's also one of two champions thus far I've actually managed to farm all the way up to 6-star Awakening. Now let's go ahead and take a look at my Rotos, the Lost Groom. Starting off with a refresher of his abilities. So on the A1, attacks one enemy, has a 75% chance of placing big versus decreased defense if you build him with accuracy. Typically people don't, but nonetheless it can be pretty clutch in certain situations, or it can be very bad in other situations with polymorph being in the game. But most notably, there's a 25% chance of granting an extra turn. Just raw odds, basically a relentless set or supercharged relentless set built into his A1. On the A2, one of his bread and butter abilities, another single target attack, destroys the target's max HP by 20%, and he adds that HP to his own max HP. Now this ability can be somewhat misunderstood, or at least complicated when it comes to how his kit works, but essentially, the tankier the target you attack, the faster you will steal the maximum of HP that he can obtain. And in this case, if you read all of the fine print here, he cannot increase his max HP by more than 60,000, and he also cannot destroy a single champion's max HP by more than 60%, meaning that you can only use this and have the effect proc 3 times per champion that you use it on. And notably, this is on a 2-turn cooldown, so you can get back to this ability very, very quickly and very, very often. And then last but not least, his bread and butter ability, the A3, 60% ignore defense right out of the gate. It will also ignore unkillable and block damage, and then enemies killed by the skill cannot be revived if he has gained the maximum amount of HP from the A2. So if you have the 60,000 maximum HP gain from here, then you'll start to block revive every time you use the A3. And of course, it will also grant an extra turn if this kills an enemy, which helps him once again cycle through his abilities very, very well. The main thing to note about all of his abilities here is that they do scale off both attack and HP. Predominantly attack, that he is an attack-based champion, but you do want to get as much HP on him as possible. One, it just makes him a bit tankier and harder to kill. We'll get to the passive in a second here, but also it just helps him do more damage. And increasing his max HP with the A2 also does help him do more damage because you're now increasing his maximum HP stat. But now let's hop over to the passive, which is what probably everyone is familiar with when they go against a Rotos. It will decrease the damage from enemy hits so that the incoming damage from any single hit will not exceed 50%, meaning that you have to use multiple hit abilities if you want to be able to kill a Rotos. One big slam is not going to be enough to do it, and you will activate his passive where he will grant an extra turn, or I guess more realistically, or in the more modern times, it is an instant turn whenever this occurs. So how do I have my Rotos build? Well, let's start off with the blessing from the jump. Ward of the Fallen is definitely the best blessing on a Rotos, no matter what tier of Awakening you happen to be at, just because having even one bone armor stack, and then you can scroll down here and see what they do, but they reduce the damage received. Essentially what happens is that when you have the bone armor stacks and they're reducing the damage further, you can have his passive proc even if you don't actually take 50% of his health in terms of damage. It would have been 50%, but that it was also reduced by the bone armor stacks, and thus it will still proc the passive while keeping him alive and a little bit healthier than 50% HP. In other words, you kind of need like a triple hitter if you really want to put down a very strong Rotos. When it comes to the gear set, I do have him in a 6-piece Merciless set. Merciless is definitely the best build for Rotos if you can pull it off. It took me many months of Centranos, I think over a year of farming it to actually pull off these 6 pieces of Merciless, and we'll go through the pieces in a bit here. But if you aren't able to pull off the 6-piece Merciless, then just your standard Savage, Lethal, Cruel, etc. type sets will most certainly do the job. When it comes to the build, Rotos, you do have to build in a fairly particular way. You want a lot of HP flat stats across the accessories, and then you want to index mostly into attack and HP percentage across all the gear pieces. So starting off with the banner, we have an attack banner. I wish this was an HP banner, but this is kind of really strong. It's attack banner with speed and attack and HP, so it's going to be pretty tough to replace it without losing a bunch of speed. On the amulet, this is kind of ideal as well. We have a crit damage amulet, and it has a double roll on HP, flat HP, and then a single roll on attack. So perfect amulet for him, crit damage. On the ring, luckily we have a merciless ring. It is not the best, but it is a merciless ring, so I wanted to put it on him, and it is flat HP with HP and attack. So it's kind of the best I could hope for the time being. Make some concessions on that one, but nonetheless, merciless ring. Pretty useful. When it comes to the artifacts, we have speed on the boots with crit rate and attack, and the cruel set with crit damage. Ideally, I would get like another accessory that is merciless, and then I'd be able to put more two pieces of cruel on them for the extra attack as well as the extra ignore defense. On the chest, we have attack percentage, which speed and crit damage. Obviously, this is a little bit unideal. There's no crit rate on it, but we're still able to crit cap him. We'll look at the total stats in a bit here. On the gloves, we have this god tier pair of gloves. Crit damage with attack, speed, and crit rate. Don't really care about the accuracy, but everything else is amazing. And note that, yes, I don't have the proper ascension stash just yet. That's a work in progress. Gonna be farming some sand devil in the future. And then the top row, speed crit, crit damage with some HP, speed crit, speed crit with HP, and then speed crit, crit damage with some HP. Not the best pieces across the top, but again, we're kind of forcing him into the merciless set. And so over time, I should be able to improve on those substats as well. So all of this rolls up into his total stats, which are as follows: 44,000 on the HP. Ideally, he'd be somewhere around 50k just to be a little bit tankier, but nonetheless, this build suffices exactly for what I need. Almost 6,500 on the attack, 3,000 on the defense, 253 on the speed. You do want your Rotos very, very fast, or fairly fast, as fast as you can get in whatever sets you're building him in, just because the faster he goes, the more turns he can take, and the more times he can just start to kill people. Full crit rate, 316% on the crit damage, and then we don't really care about the accuracy or the resistance. And then for the masteries on the Rotos, we kind of have a pretty standard nuker type style when it comes to the offense tree and the defense tree. We're going through, you know, all the crit rate, crit damage stuff. Notably, I went for shield breaker just because it's more common that you're going to hit into shields nowadays, or even like a mini shield from like a Duchess can be really strong. I still go with Ruthless Ambush because most of the time I still wanted to max his damage on the first hit. Cycle of Violence is very, very important because he does a lot of damage. And when you combine this effect with the Merciless set, he can literally go like back-to-back A3s or back-to-back A2s, and it can be absolutely devastating for the enemy, so you definitely want that. And of course, we're working our way down, all the way down to Helm Smasher. Of course, we do want to ignore as much defense as possible across his abilities. And then on the defense tree, pretty standard Z pattern here, ending on Retribution, because if he survives, sometimes he can get a counterattack in before he gets his passive to proc, and so he weakens the target, and then he can come in with the extra turn and finish them off. So first, let's head over to Tag Team Arena to show him in action. As you can see here, we are trying to regain our Gold 2 status, and so I want at least one more triple win to secure my spot in Gold 2 once the reset happens in an hour here. So we're going to take on this last team here. So let me throw together some teams that should be able to counter these teams, and one of them is going to, of course, feature Rotos. All right, the teams have been assembled, so I'll walk you through them relatively quickly. This is going to be like a super slow tanky team, UDK and Wukong. So I'm going to run my standard speed comp, burn off the stone skin presumably, and block revive with the Foley, finish him up with the Narcies. Rotos is going to come in on team 2. We are going to counter this team, which is very annoying. We have an Armons, we have a Lady Mikage, lots of annoying things, but one of the main combinations I do like to use is Ancora plus Rotos. So he's going to be immune from all CC because he's going to have the highest crit damage on the team. And then he'll also most likely get an instant turn because Georgia typically targets him. He can't die to a single hitter. And so we should be able to cut in on whatever they're going to be doing here. And then we should be able to start killing them one by one. And then lastly, team 3 here, the Sify Rotos. We're going to try and counter that with Harima and a bunch of Force Champions so that Rotos is a little bit neutered. So we'll see how that one goes as well. All right, so here we are in fight number 2. We were able to beat the first team. Lots of stone skin, but that's fine. We want them to go first. They do all their stuff. We're stunned, we're double stunned, but Rotos is protected. Wukong does his thing, doesn't really matter. We can cleanse with Mithrala, why not? And Georgia should once again, there we go for Rotos. Instant turn there, we get the passive to proc, and now we can start going ham on them. So Wukong is going to come back to life and stuff, so we're going to save him for last. And now we can just try and get rid of Mikage, preferably over him. So hopefully now we don't weak hit, but we do have control of the fight. The main threats are gone, and we should be able to take out, unfortunate weak hit. But we are protected from the sleep. We don't have to worry about that from Lady Mikage. She cannot do that because of the because of Ankora's passive. So we are free to do things. Wukong is not really going to be that big of a threat. So there we go. Got her down. And yeah, so this is one of my favorite use cases. I can counter an Armands and Georgid or Shuzen and Georgid or anything where they like instantly go first and can attack just because I know how the AI works. Georgid's going to typically target a Rotos. He can't be one shot. You activate his extra turn or instant turn, and then he's able to start going ham and doing some things. So we can easily take over a fight just like that. For anyone who was curious, we were able to tackle all three. So basically we should be secured here into restoring our status into gold 2, but I'll keep monitoring it over the next hour to see if that is the case. Now here we are in the classic arena, so we can try and take on some more teams, and in this case we're going to try and challenge ourselves a little bit and not just go for some easy farm teams like I would normally do in the classic arena. We'll see if we can do some hard things. Specifically, we're going to go against teams where you would think that he would be bad against, but there are ways to strategize around teams that are typically have champions who counter him. I still run him a lot of the times into teams with Harimas or UDKs just because there are ways to get around it. So we're going to bring out the Armands to sheep the UDK to get rid of that passive. Siegfried is not as scary. He can be, but again, just like with the Georgid, if he does try to single target attack Rotos, he can't die. You don't get any of the splash damage, so it's kind of a soft counter to, let's say, a Siegfried on auto. In like live arena, people will know who to attack to avoid that happening, but when it's just the AI doing it, they'll typically go for the Rotos, which is exactly what we want. So we'll bring in the Rotos, of course. I'll bring in Galathyr just for the insurance, and I think in this case, I'll run Mikage. Why not? Just for the increased attack and potential to stun as well. So I do expect that the UDK is going to be in Stone Skin, and obviously UDK can be a relative hard counter to a Rotos, but like I said, we can control him a decent amount just by taking advantage of the fact that we can just do that with the sheep. So what we want to do here in this particular instance is probably activate Siegfried's passive. Actually, I'm just going to steal some HP, and Korra's going to cleanse, and that's fine. That's not that big of a deal, but now we can change forms on Mikage. So once the cleanse is burned, we can just stun him up and not have to worry about that. So now I guess Korra will steal it. Never mind. So we do have to worry about that. So in that case, let me just change forms on Galathyr. We'll do block active skills instead. There we go. All right, how about that? Okay, so we have UDK popping back up, which is unfortunate, so we might have to take a dead turn. Nope, never mind, Armand's is ready to go. We'll just sheep that guy again. So while we're waiting for the, I guess that's the downside of running the slow sheep UDK thing, is that, or the slow UDK, is that it takes him forever to get turns when he actually does need to try and stay alive. So that is annoying, but that is okay. We don't have the Ankora protecting him anymore. We don't really need our active skills for the few amount of turns here. Doesn't really matter. We're just going to whittle our way through and hopefully be able to cycle back enough to kill the Siegfried, ideally before we have to kill UDK. And we're definitely probably going to weak hit on the UDK as well. In fact, in order to try and speed this up a little bit, I'm just going to switch forms on Mikage, put her back in form 1 so we get increased attack. Also the cleanse off of her passive, which is nice for any attack-based champions. We didn't kill UDK, unfortunate. In this case, I kind of do want to finish him off just because Siegfried is stunned. And so he can metamorph here, but it's not going to really do anything because he is stunned. So we will wait extra turn. Oh, there we go. And boom, gone. So yeah, UDK is on the team, but you know, with a sheeping champion, a Sun Wukong or an Armands, he's not that much of a threat, and we can still go, take on negative affinity type matchups like that. Looks like we have another Armands into Georgid, so we should be able to replicate what we did for the 3v3 team. So we're going to put Mithrala in the lead because I do expect that Armands is going to be able to steal everyone's turn meter, but he probably will get resisted when he tries to sheep. Again, we're abusing the AI of this. It's not going to work in live arena, for example. And Korra is coming in there to protect him from the stun from the Armands. And then we're going to bring in once again the Galathyr just to make sure, just in case anything goes south. So again, we're kind of taking advantage of bad or not smart AI that exists in the game. He's protected from the stun. Thank you, Ankora. We protect him from the sheep thanks to Mithrala. Georgid does his thing, activates our Rotos. In this case, we're going to take our time slowly killing them, but we're going to let her do her revive. It is fine. She's going to pick up Armands. And in this case, I'm actually going to swap forms here. We're going to lock them all out so we don't have to worry about them doing anything else. and then we can basically just take over the fight. Most likely we'll get petrified. Yep. And then, unfortunately, she petrified herself. We're also immune to the Siffy Sleep. So I guess a side showcase here on Ancora doing her thing, man. She's such a good champion. I think she's criminally underrated as a fusion when she came out, but super strong. 2 examples of how she can just take CC on behalf of other champions. I don't really care if she takes the stun because we do also have like 2 other cleansers on the team, so it's not it's not the end of the world. But yeah, at this point, basically over. Doesn't really matter. We can lock out our mons again, so we can't do anything. And it's GG. So once again, taking advantage of the fact that AI will target him with, one-shot wonder abilities like a Georgid, and so we don't have to worry about that if you set up a team around it. And just to challenge ourselves a little bit, we're going to try and beat this last team here with the Duchess, the Odin, the Siegfried, and the enemy Galathir, who has a blessing. And I wish I could get a blessing on my Galathir, but that's neither here nor there. So we're going to keep Galathir in the team because this is a hard team, so I do want to use the best of the best. We no longer need Mithrala because there's not an Armons in the team. And actually, in place of Ancora, I am going to run Mikage because, just as we saw earlier, her passive will cleanse the champion with the highest attack on the team, which is going to be Rotos. And then for this one, we're going to bring in a sleeper pick for Arena. Used to be used a lot more in the Arena, but we're going to bring in Riho so that the Odin will probably stun himself, ideally. So let's see what we can do against this team. I do expect that the Duchess is going to be in 6-piece Stone Skin, which will most certainly be painful. Never mind, she's not. Oh, they're actually slower, which is very surprising. Well, that's fine. So we can change forms here on Mikage, and then we'll stun. Probably going to get resisted by the Galathir. Never mind, he does not have enough resistance. Well, this is not the fight I was expecting. I thought they were going to be a lot tougher. Okay, high resistance on the Duchess. Got it. So in this case, we don't want to deal with the Odin block damage thing, even though the A3 can't ignore it. It is kind of annoying to have to cycle through multiple A3s to get that to work. So we're going to kill him so his passive doesn't proc, and then we're going to take advantage of we're going to start stealing some of the HP away from the Duchess. So since we are in control of the fight already, let's go ahead and place block active skills, kind of take over here. Let's protect ourselves from the Siegfried A1 that's going to try and transfer the debuffs. Let's go ahead and kill the Duchess. He does that. That hurt, and that actually activated his ability. So I think this should proc the passive, so we're not actually going to be able to get that turn. That's fine. We'll turn around and stun him up so he can't do the thing he was about to do. We'll stun him again. Good control here with the Galathir and the Mikage. Then we can ignore the block damage, take over that. We got the Merciless proc there, I believe. Pretty nice. Reduce the cooldown. We got the both procs right there, Merciless proc as well as the Cycle of Violence proc. So once again, you do really want to have both of those combined together. We're going to do the ally attack on this one just to get the increased attack up. We are running negative affinity here, so it might be a little bit harder to finish him off. We have increased accuracy, so we should be able to CC him. And then we can use whatever to finish him off. Excellent. He's going to die to the HP burn. So, hey, there you go. We even beat the super hard team that somehow we were faster than without a speed aura. So I'm not sure what this guy is doing wrong, but no offense to him. As far as other areas where you can use Rotos the Lost Groom, of course, he is mostly known for the arena, but that does not mean that he does not have some place in some certain areas of PvE. Notably for dungeons, he can be used to block revive on the minions in the Ice Golem. Since they are minions, they're not subject to the reduced destroying of max HP that he has on bosses with the A2, so he gets the full effect, and so it's very easy for him to stack up his maximum HP just by one or two A2s on the minions in Ice Golem, and from then on his A3s will block revive, which can be very useful, certainly in some sort of challenge tournament as well. I've used that in the past. Faction Wars, of course, he's single target, so it's not the fastest compared to an AoE champion, but nonetheless he cycles through his abilities so quickly and he can just one-shot things back to back to back. So he can definitely be a DPS in Faction Wars. And I think he like two-shots the boss. I don't have him in my team currently because he's a little bit too fast compared to the other champions. But nonetheless, he's been in there for ages. We're not going to do Live Arena, but I do use him in Live Arena as much as possible. Just have to watch out for UDKs and stuff like that. He's definitely not useful in clan bosses, that's for sure. But Doom Tower, he can also be pretty useful against some bosses. I know that he is currently in my Griffin team, which I can't show you because it's rotation 1, unfortunately, in the Doom Tower. But there he is on the Griffin team, just the trifecta of DPS there, just kind of doing a lot of damage as quickly as possible against the boss. And then I used to run him a long time ago against the Eternal Dragon, just because, again, he has relatively short cooldowns on all his abilities. So even if you get locked out by the Eternal Dragon, you use your A1, potentially get an extra turn, and then your A2 is ready to go, and you can start killing some of the minions and resetting everyone else's cooldown. So he could definitely work more so on manual, but nonetheless he can work on the Eternal Dragon when it comes to Doom Tower bosses. Curse City, of course, you can use him there if he happened to fit the restrictions. He's just going to be a super powered nuker who can just take out enemy waves basically in one go. But he's also useful against certain bosses. I know I've used him against like the Scarab King in the Curse City because he can destroy max HP, and a lot of variations of Ice Golem as well for the same thing about blocking the revive on the minions. And lastly, of course, he can be useful in Siege. It is basically arena, another form of arena, so he is going to shine there as well. So there you have it. That's going to do it for the free-to-play champion showcase for Rotos the Lost Groom. And I guess I should update you guys on what I decided to do relative to a different poll that I ran about whether or not to empower my Rotos to +2, because I do have 2 copies of him sitting around. I opted to just kind of hold off for now. I don't really want to do the +1 just because it's a little bit of stats, but it doesn't really give me the speed that I'm looking for. But essentially, if we navigate over there to the Faction Guardians area, I would have had to have forfeited the 10% attack in order to get him to +2. So he would get 10% attack, but I would lose to the 10% attack across the entire faction. So I ultimately decided against that, and I'm just going to hope that I've happened to fill this faction all the way up to 10, and then I can work on empowering my Rotos to +2 at least. But what was interesting was that this poll was basically neck and neck. I think it was like 52%, 48% in favor of keeping it like this with the Faction Guardian. So it was pretty split. So you guys were as torn as I was, which I find kind of interesting. But yeah, I do run polls from time to time on my community tab page, so you can head over there if you want to check some of those out and vote on those that I've run in the past. But there will also be a new poll after this video goes live asking you guys to decide which champion you'd like to see featured in the free-to-play champion showcase next. Let me know in the comment section down below if you are also fortunate enough to have Rotos on your account, and let me know how you guys have built him. Have you pulled off the Merciless set yet, or are you still rocking the Savage, Lethal, and or Cruel? As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help out the channel, and feel free to hit that subscribe button down below if you are enjoying the content on this channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.